As algorithms begin to automate creation, planning, and buying, the role of traditional holding agencies is shifting to validation and strategic counsel. In the words of Sir Martin Sorrell, founder and executive chairman of S4 Capital, 2024 was wow, 2025 was how, and 2026 is now, proving where agencies add value in an AI-first economy. Hello and welcome to yet another episode of The Agency Architect. The world of advertising, media, and creativity is going through some seismic shifts. And as the tectonic plates clash with each other, there's one individual who has seen all of it happen. We are going to understand from his vantage point what exactly is the status quo that is going to build up in this world, especially as AI, automation, and artificial intelligence is something that has become buzzwords. But there is a lot that needs to be uncovered within. I have with me Sir Martin Sorrell, Chairman of S4 Capital, and I would love to welcome him in India once again, where he has now become a regular fixture.
Thanks very much, Vanita. Good to be with you.
But while we talk about it, I really want to understand more about the recent bloodbath that we saw on Wall Street.
You mean the Anthropic one? I think what the market is saying or trying to say is there's this cloud of uncertainty or thunderstorm of uncertainty because it is quite significant. I mean, Publicis delivers stellar results. So it's a little bit of a puzzle, other than you have to explain it that people are just worried about what the impact of AI is on our business and on the traditional holding company business model. And Publicis have managed to distance itself. I mean, the bears at WPP are talking about -8% in Q4 of last year. We'll see what they report on February the 26th. And Publicis was +5. Publicis have done a good job. They have strong leadership with Maurice Levy handing over to Arthur Sadoun. It's a good combo. They have a strong strategy, a good story, I would say. We have to see whether it can deliver in practice, particularly around data and digital, with Epsilon and Sapient. And then they have the best structure, which is a structure that mirrors what we're doing at Monks, or we mirror them, which is country first, client second, and discipline or capability third. Omnicom have gone the other way with discipline first, which I think is a recipe for disaster. And WPP look as though they're going the same way, which is similarly a recipe for disaster. It creates too much internal friction. Neither is perfect because, you could argue quite logically the client should come first. But in order to build clients locally, for example, here in India, in an economy that's growing at 6% plus, fastest growing economy that certainly the IMF follows last year, this year forecast, and next year forecast. So India is a good example. You want to service your global clients here in India, but you also want to build strong relationships with the Indian oligarchs or the stunningly successful Indian entrepreneurs and beyond. So I think Publicis has done a good job. The Dentsu, WPP, I think Omnicom actually is under the gun. It's not reported very closely because Omnicom doesn't report net revenue, it only reports gross revenue. So you've got this great divergence. You've got one company doing well, Havas maybe doing well but on a smaller scale, and then three companies in doo-doo, right? WPP, Dentsu, all having real trouble. IPG having folded their tent and folded it into Omnicom. The other thing I would say that is our industry is K-shaped. It's 1.2 trillion, 900 billion in digital, which is growing at 15-20%. The 300 billion, which WBD and Paramount are scrapping over, is going backwards. So free-to-air TV is under huge pressure. You see it even here in India, where live sport buttresses it, but it still makes it difficult. So you really got two industries, and I think campaign and everybody else should report the digital industry and the traditional. And usually, what happens is there's a one-to-one, almost a one-to-one correlation between corporate profitability and ad revenues, ad agency revenues. That's broken down for, I think, for a couple of reasons. Firstly, because of that traditional business going backwards, and that's where the heart of Omnicom and indeed Publicis and WPP and Dentsu is based. And then you've got the digital part, which is growing like Topsy, but the hyperscalers, Alphabet, Meta, Amazon, et al., are reducing their marketing spend because they're spending, altogether, they're spending 600 billion plus this year on data infrastructure, AI infrastructure, data farms, and God knows what. So that 600 billion is huge. So they're switching their spending from OPEX marketing to CAPEX. So that correlation between company profitability and agency revenues or agency spending or advertising spending has broken down.
What happens is that most of the agencies, whether you're talking about the holding companies or whether you're talking about, the growing mushrooming of the independent agencies, they largely work with these platforms, and hence they are more or less limited with the kind of platform native tools that are there. Building these kind of tools from scratch is obviously very prohibitive. Some of the companies have tried to do it, but there is a lot of synergy that is still existing where they lean into the various tech platforms that are
Mhm.
there. Do you think this can also be one of the limiting factors, when
No,
everyone talks about?
no. Look, that 900 billion that is in digital is very concentrated, and in fact, the 1.2 trillion is now very concentrated. There's this view that the marketeer's job has become more complicated and it's become simpler. I mean, there are basically six choices. I'm simplifying it, but there are six choices, and they're called Alphabet, Meta, Amazon, Alibaba, Tencent, and ByteDance, and that's it. The hyperscalers are spending 600 billion on capex around AI, which means their market share, plus Musk, plus Nvidia, plus Microsoft, plus Apple, their share is going to get bigger. So it's very, very concentrated. The new head of MI6, who only talks once a year, a woman called, first name is Blaze, she came out with something we've been saying for about the last 3 or 4 years, which is, Tim Cook is president of the country, basically. If Apple's worth 4 trillion, that places them, bigger than the UK, bigger than France, bigger than but not bigger than Germany, bigger than Italy, bigger than Spain. So these are nation states, and you have to get used to that.
But do you think that also ensures, or rather, unfortunately, uh, means a lot of dependency on these?
Oh, absolutely right. But what the agencies have to understand is you have to get closer to the platforms. I mean, I think we're not far off the day where clients will be able automatically, with technology, to create, produce, plan, buy, distribute advertising campaigns with an end-to-end model. You're almost there. If you merge VO3, Nano Banana, and Performance Max, in the case of Meta, it's Advantage Plus. If you merge that, you basically have an end-to-end model. And if you're a small and medium-sized business, you can do it now. Now, the platforms say they don't want to do it with the enterprise, or publicly they say that, because I don't think they want to alienate the agencies, because it is a direct attack. I mean, I think the holding companies, coming back to your original question, why is the market so wobbly in relation to agencies? There's also a fear that the media model will come under attack, because the technology exposes all the frictions and all the inefficiencies in the media chain. We all know there are sticky fingers. We all know there are media discounts, rebates, etc., which maybe don't accrue to clients, but in an automatic, fully automated fully mechanized system, all those frictions will disappear. What agencies have to understand is that they increasingly will form a closer relationship with the platforms as well as the clients. And they will always, in my view, be at least validators for the decision of the algorithms. So you wouldn't, when Mark Zuckerberg just before Cannes said, send me your credit card and we'll do campaigns for you, that's fine. But he's probably 200 billion out of the 1.2 trillion, or 200 billion out of the 900, so call it 20%. There's another 80% that other algorithms decide. So somebody has to independently decide whether the algorithm works. So that's our function, I think. There are other things we do, obviously, strategically, creatively, whatever. But one of our most important functions is to validate the results and be that independent arbitrator. And that's where I think we're going to go. That means that the agency model has to shift dramatically from what it is. Sam Altman was the one who said, 95% of the people are going to be out of work. I agree with the direction that Sam Altman said, and we get into that. I don't agree with the 95%. It's not going to be 95%, but it's going to be a significant number. Even before AI, I mean, Omnicom and IPG have nothing to do with AI in the last year. They've dabbled with it, but AI hasn't fundamentally altered the way they operate yet. And yet they've gone from 127,500 to 104,000 people. If I add back the 6,000 people they're going to lose because they're selling off $1 billion of revenue, Jack Morton and the like, let's say 127,500 to 110. 17,500 people have lost their job before the deal took place, because the deal only took place legally approved in early December. So the real headcount reduction is yet to come, and one could see them dropping under 100,000, maybe getting as low as 90, 95,000. So we're talking about huge changes, and then AI has to bite. Okay. And WPP is going to announce their strategy, led by McKinsey. I mean, it's not going to come out with any earth-shattering. It looks like it's going to be one WPP, big deal, right? But they're going the wrong way, in my view. They're going down the wrong matrix. It has to be country first, client second, capability third. And they're going capability first.
OpenAI has finally announced that it is going to start experimenting with ads and is going to roll it out, right?
Fantastic. That's what we're looking for.
Yes.
And Gemini too. Gemini also.
As of now, Gemini has not started, but OpenAI has already started doing that. And Omnicom has said that it's already doing a pilot project where some of its clients will be on board of it. And what you mentioned is that the old agency model that used to be there, when it comes to, strategic thinking is still at the core of it, probably to a certain extent. The client hand-holding that is still there. But the execution, the mapping, the planning, now agentic AI can do it, chatbots can do it, which means that the role of agencies is getting diminished more and more.
So backing out for a minute, where is AI affecting our business? Number one, visualization and copywriting, okay? So if we're making an ad, instead of it costing $2.5 million, I'm thinking of a specific example in a minute, being shot in Eastern Europe and taking 4 months, we could do it in $500,000 or even less in 4 weeks. So one is visualization, copywriting. And how do we charge? We charge on the basis of time. And yet the time is shrinking. So our revenue is going to be less unless we shift the model to an output-based model, which is, we're producing 1 million assets for you as a cost per asset. So that's one thing. The second thing is, and there will be less art directors and copywriters in that. That's going to happen. That's happening already. Secondly, personalization at scale, what I call Netflix on steroids. So using first-party data, critically important, and the signals from the platform to tailor a message to you, to your individual, or me, our individual needs and whatever. That's a huge opportunity and will increase employment. Media planning and buying. 250,000 people in our industry employ media planning. It's ridiculous, right? It's $1 trillion, 1.2 trillion. BlackRock, on its own, in the investment industry, manages 14 trillion. I don't think they do things manually like we do. right? Or spreadsheets or Excel sheets. It's all done algorithmically, right? That's how you decide. Erwin Gottlieb, when he was running Group M, used to refer to media planning and buying as media investment management. That's right on the money. That's what we're doing. We're allocating money across various investment channels. That has to be done better. The human mind is not as good as a machine with good data in producing results. So we're going to see big impact there. And that's one of the big reasons why there's wobbles in the market, because people are saying, is that going to affect the model? The fourth area is general efficiency. So we have an outside broadcasting initiative with NVIDIA, AWS, and Adobe, where we reduce the cost of outside broadcasting using AI and cloud, doing it remotely, reduce the cost by 80 or 90%. So it's just an example of it. But client and agency are going to become much more efficient. And the fifth area, which I think is super important and people don't really understand, although one of our clients here yesterday, right on the money on this too, is democratizing knowledge. So you're going to make organizations much flatter, right? Because AI enables you to enfranchise people, if you give them access to all the information. And you know this, the way that clients and agencies operate is you control a silo, a vertical, by controlling the information. That's what you do. And if you look at a Palantir, for example, I think Alex Karp has said his revenue is going to increase by 4 times and his headcount is going to fall. Mm-hmm. So we have to get used to the fact.
So you spoke about, outcome-based assessment.
Yes.
That is something that agencies need to look at. And you also spoke about defragmentization of the various silos, which is something that most agencies, it's kind of embedded in their DNA, if you look at it.
Well, yeah. I mean, the problem is, campaign is the problem, by the way, because everyone wants to get their physiognomy on campaign, their picture on campaign, have an interview on campaign and build themselves up. That's why our industry is not as trusted as the investment banking industry or the consulting industry.
So maybe we should stop glorifying the individual and focus on the work.
No. I think that is a big point. Mm-hmm. I mean, that's an important point because, if I reflect on my time in the industry, the biggest problem, good people are good by definition. The good people who share are the real jewels. Those are the people. If you can find people who are excellent, who you want to interview and campaign, but who also wish to share in the organization their knowledge and whatever, and don't operate vertically. We just don't think laterally. We always think vertically. We want to control what we have, limit information, the spread of information. That's why AI is, in my view, so powerful.
But do you see that happening? Because, if you look at it, control or, ceding control is something that comes very difficult.
It's not ceding control. It's a really important distinction, I think. It's not ceding control. You're not giving up anything. You're unleashing a tremendous amount of energy, intelligence, and you're democratizing knowledge. So everybody has that knowledge and everybody has the ability to bring input. And the biggest problem inside organizations is politics, inside clients, inside magazines, inside agencies, is the inability of people to work together. There's an inverse relationship between willingness to cooperate and sort of place in an organization. The higher up you go, the less cooperation you get.
And how do you translate that in Monks? Because, you mentioned about the fact it's country first and client.
In theory, we should be better because, we're digital only or first, data-driven, which in AI era is critically important, faster, better, more efficient, cheaper, and more, and then unitary, okay? But it is still difficult because, again, people being people, the matrix we have is country first or region first, then client, then capability. That doesn't mean that clients are less important than countries. That's the wrong way of thinking about it. What it means is, in order to organize, because it's a matrix, you have to make some sacrifices. But I think the downside of having country first is far less the downside of having discipline first, because you have people fighting with one another. But I think at the end of the day, that's the best way to approach the business.
In this three C's, where does a fourth C, which is creativity, actually, which is again, the nucleus, the germ of this
Well,
industry, where
look,
does
look,
it sit?
look. It's still strategic, creative, media, and tech has come into the forefront. And if I think about my three lives, Saatchi's, WPP, now S4. I mean, Saatchi's was about globalization. WPP was about the continuation of globalization, and then S4 is still about, but it's about fragmented geography now because of US, China, Ukraine, and Iran, and it's also about efficiency through the application of technology at huge scale. And I think that's the iterations. But in all three cases, we're driven by two forces. One is geography, and the other is technology. It's just that the balance between them, with Saatchi's, geography was here, and of course technology was down here. With WPP, it's sort of balanced, particularly as we went into the new millennium, and then now with S4 technology. But the skills that you have are still, you need, still strategic, still creative, still media, still tech.
So you actually said that, you don't need to learn code because now you have vibe coding, right? So vibe
Well,
coding will do most of the stuff for you.
So everybody has access to it, which is fantastic. You don't have to go through a 4-year university degree. You can get somebody to do it, or get a thing to do it for you.
But that's also very risky because we have seen the creation of Maltbook, a social media for bots, and I was reading the other day about how a lot of agencies will still be able to convince their clients that the reason they are very pertinent to their business model is because now they are adopting the role, or rather increasingly adopting the role of consultants. And clients also need to be worried about how much their customer data they want to share with somebody who can probably create an app or a tool or something internally without having the compliance and the legal guardrails built in. That dealing in that is a big pain point.
But I think consumers are adopting AI faster than companies. In two verticals, we see AI adoption at scale: autos, because of and financial services. Why they're changing was of an external force. My view, we said in 24 with AI, wow, and then in 25, how, and then we think maybe in 26 now. I'm not so sure. We need the chill wind of recession, sadly, I think, to get people to change and adopt AI at scale. Because I said before, if companies are growing at 12% EPS consistently, or even more, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. There's no momentum to change. And what's really interesting is when we think about who we should contact inside a company to sort of stimulate AI change, transformation, we discuss CMOs, we discuss CIOs, and we then conclude that it's the CFO that probably is the big driver of change. I mean, my favorite question currently is, what proportion of your media cost do you spend on creative? In my view, it shouldn't be more than 10%. You should be efficient at 10%. Many companies spend 15 or 20%, which is far too much. And with the car companies, for example, the CMOs, the clever CMOs, understand that with the Chinese EVs coming at them, at some point in time, the CEO is going to say to them, you have to reduce your media cost in order to compete, because we have to take our costs down. So they've already started to reduce their creative costs, so they have more wiggle room on the media budget, and they have more money for their media budget. I think that's critical. And when I go back to when I started at Saatchi's, when I was CFO, we were paid 15% by Procter or whatever. And we used to allocate 10% to creative, because they were the mucky mucks who had the corner offices and the Ferraris, and then 5% to the media people, who were the traders. They were the beyond the salt, the lower level people, because it evened up, and then now the media people are probably more important than the creative people in the agency hierarchy because they deliver more profit. But if you think about procurement squeezed our 15% to 10%, and then we allocated probably 7.5% to creative, 2.5% to media, and then the media discounts made up the profitability on media. So it's sort of balanced out.
Which kind of sounds like sensible, equitable distribution. So, you mentioned about the automotive
Yeah,
industry and you mentioned about the BFSI, which have been the industries that have actually embraced AI to a great
yeah,
extent, and for external forces
yes.
being the luxury industry and the apparel industry have also started using it from end to end, right from design to conceptualization and
Yeah,
everything.
I'm not sure I totally agree with that. I think they've experimented. Most clients test, they do an audit, they do an experiment. They don't go wholesale.
Hmm.
And it's turkeys don't vote for Christmas. And there is tremendous fear around what the implications of these machine applications will be and what does it mean for my job or whatever. So we're all going to live longer. We're all going to be healthier. We will have our digital twin, which will forecast what we will do if we continue living in the way that we're living, so we will adjust our thing. So, and if we're going to live longer, what are we going to do? If we've been displaced by machines. So all these fears are, I think, in a way, well founded, but perhaps, but it makes people reticent to change, and people don't understand. AI is not about technology, in my view. We have a thing, a Monks called Monks Flow, which is a suite of about 10 products. Persona Flow, it deals with media planning and buying, visualization and copywriting, deals with personalization at scale, efficiency, whatever, democratization. And these Monks Flow is about simplifying the workflow. It's not about technology. I mean, technology is great. It's about simplifying the workflow and then changing. And there's one story which I think is a great story. So there was a guy called Hubert Joly, who is a French McKinsey consultant. He's now professor at Harvard Business School. And he became CEO of Best Buy, the retailer in America. And this was to move Best Buy from a traditional bricks and mortar retailer to a digital retailer. So he's in Minneapolis. He goes in as CEO, and everybody tells him it's about change management. So he spends 6 months looking at Best Buy, and he comes to the conclusion at the end of 6 months that it is about change management, and he changes the management. And I think, that's it. You either change, or you will be changed. We're going to have to live with an era of where there is very little friction, and our ability to exploit inefficiencies in the system is gone.
3 years ago, it was wow, then now, and how.
Yeah.
Do you think now if I
Wow,
would
how, and now.
now? So I would have thought that the next one, if I were to add another alphabet to it, be show.
That our clients will operate in a much more effective and efficient way. There's so much rubbish around, rubbish creative work. And what AI will do, or is doing already, is raising the general level of creative. So there's a lot of crap. We'll get rid of the crap, and there'll be a much higher level. The super creative stuff, the great stuff, will still be there, produced by human beings as well. That was his view. And I think that's true. And I think it's a really good point. But on top of that, the real danger is going to be when machines are better than people. And that may come.
That actually gives me an analogy of so you'll always have a James Cameron movie that you'll line up for. You will always have a Quentin Tarantino movie that you'll line up for. And for all the other movies, there's Netflix, right? So when you're talking about that, I think it's going to be that.
Just before Christmas, I went to see somebody in India who showed me, on his Geo phone, the first AI produced full length feature film. It's coming.
Yes.
This era of I was at a presentation by one of the free-to-air television companies, and the CEO said, Netflix pays $7 million an hour or $10 million an hour. We only spend $4 million. And I said to her, stand by. You're going to be able to produce content for very low, using technology for low. And then, consumers will become, this thing about authenticity, you mentioned legal departments, etc. earlier on, blocking stuff inside companies, and that's true. But consumers will become more and more attuned to AI characters. I'm not saying that there aren't instances where you have to be authentic and you can't use synthetics, but our sort of aversion to synthetics will evaporate over time.
Well, thank you so much,
Thank you.
Sir Martin, for taking the time.
Thanks
It was
for
a
doing
pleasure.
It's good, and thanks for doing it with all the pressures that you're under.
No, it's always a pleasure, and I
All
look
right.
forward to catching up with you in Cannes as
Good
well.
to see you.
If
Yeah,
not before
absolutely.
that.
We should do that.
All right.
Definitely.
Thank
Very
you.
good.